Hey, what's up everyone? For this video I want to talk about a whole bunch of different things. I don't want this to be like a 45-minute video, so I'm just going to speed this up. Alright, first part of the video I want to talk about Ring of Honor's Manhattan Mayhem IV. This will be taking place tomorrow night in New York City. This will not be on pay-per-view. This will just be a DVD taping. But, you know, I mean, it should be a great show, but at the same time, I'm not going to say that this is guaranteed to be like a must-see New York City show. I think this has potential to kind of fall flat, actually. It's just a lot of question marks. I mean, like a lot of these matches have potential to be great, they have potential to be good, but at the same time, I can see a lot of them kind of ending up being disappointing. I think Roderick and Eddie has potential to be great, but at the same time, I could just see it being average. I could see there being a dead crowd. A lot of question marks there, but at the same time, it could still be great, though. Don't get me wrong. Then we had Kings of Wrestling versus LAX, which should be fun, but at the same time, there's a lot of question marks about Homicide. Not necessarily a match I want to see right now, but it could still be great, but at the same time, I think it could still be average. But I'll talk about more of that stuff later. Let me just run down the whole card. We have Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly taking on the House of Truth, Michael Elgin and a mystery partner. Should be a good match. Cole and O'Reilly tagging up. You can't really lose right there. Grizzly Redwood versus Tommaso Ciampa. I'm not a big fan of Grizzly. I mean, Grizzly's okay, but I don't know. I just want to bring him in for a New York City show all the time. But I can't complain about it because I like Grizzly Redwood, though. I don't know. I just can't take him seriously sometimes when the card is supposed to be like a super card, if you know what I'm trying to say. Next up, we have the Prodigy, Mike Bennett, taking on Steve Corino. They set this match up beautifully on HDNet. You know, really, really good stuff between these guys. You know, Mike Bennett is a great heel, I'll tell you that. I think he's very, very good at, you know, what he does good, if you know what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, I'm not so sure, you know, how far you could really go with this guy. I know Jim Cornette and Kerry Silkin have put this guy over huge, but you know, I haven't seen enough of him. I'm not going to jump to a conclusion and say that he's garbage, like some of the people on the message board are saying and stuff like that. But I don't know, like Jim Cornette, you know, this is the same guy that said Matt Morgan was going to be WWE champion, was going to be a superstar. And I'm still not impressed with Matt Morgan. I just think Jim Cornette doesn't really have great taste and talent. And, you know, I don't know. The Prodigy Mike Bennett, you know, he needs to get it done in the ring, though. I just don't want to see, you know, Kerry Silkin put the belt on him just because he has the look. I think he'll definitely be selling out if he does that. I think you need to stay loyal to the fan base. You know, if this guy doesn't significantly improve in the ring, then you cannot give him the ROH World title. And that's pretty much the storyline. The storyline is that he's guaranteeing to win the belt by the end of 2011. So we'll see what happens there. I'm not that high on the guy, but, you know, let's give him a chance. But, you know, this match has, you know, like I said, they set it up really nicely on HDNet. You know, Steve Corino has a new character change. You know, he's on a path of righteousness. He's trying to, you know, make up for all the evil things he did last year. It's a character that I can relate to. I think it's a character that a lot of people can sympathize with. And I just think it's a great character change. I think Corino is on pace to, you know, being the most influential wrestler of the year. PWI Magazine has that award, you know, the most influential. I think Steve Corino would probably be a perfect candidate for that. So that should be an interesting match as far as, you know, just interaction, storyline, and stuff like that. And then we'll get TJ Perkins versus El Generico. I'm not going to say this is a dream match. You know, this is kind of like a PWG match. And it should be great. I think this should be the best match that TJ Perkins has had in ROH to date so far. I'm expecting this to be a 4-star match, actually. I mean, why not just bring TJ Perkins in as an ROH regular? Just put him on the permanent roster. I think he's that good. You know, I know you have to fly him in from the West Coast, but I think it's worth the money. If you're going to keep the Prodigy and Grizzly Redwood and, you know, all these other guys on the roster, why not just keep TJ Perkins on the permanent roster? So yeah, then we'll have the Briscoes versus the All Night Express. I mean, we've seen this before. It doesn't really seem like a fresh matchup to me, but at the same time, you know, All Night Express have improved a lot since Supercard of Honor 5 when they last faced each other in New York City. So this has potential to be, you know, a main event caliber match, while the other match is kind of just a, you know, opening, you know, matchup. This could just be on a whole nother level. So, you know, it could be good. You know, this is kind of like process of elimination. They just put these two teams together because, you know, who else are they going to face? You know, the rest of the card was pretty much booked by the time they announced this match. But it should still be great. You know, this has potential to be a 4-star match, but at the same time, I could just see it being average. Then we had Davey Richards versus Christopher Daniels, the Pure Rules match. Now, I like this because, you know, I know people have talked about this on the message board, but it really makes a lot of sense. You know, you had Davey that got a concussion at Final Battle. Then you had Daniels who got a concussion. at the 9th anniversary show. So it just kind of makes sense, you know, a pure rules match. They don't have to kill each other. They can just have a straight up technical wrestling match. Pure rules matches are pretty fun. You know, they're kind of slow at first, but as the match progresses, there's a lot of drama with the rope breaks and, you know, and the 20 count. There's just a lot of things that you could do with it that could really, you know, make this match great. And I wouldn't expect this to be as explosive and as intense as their other match, but this should be a better storytelling match. And you know, I'll talk more about Christopher Daniels in the TNA portion of this video, but looks like Danielson might be headed back to TNA for good, which is not really a sign that his ROH tenure is up yet, though. So that's a good thing. I just hope he still puts in the same effort that he's been putting in, because I think Daniels has had an amazing run in ROH so far, to tell you the truth. And I kind of feel guilty that I put him as the most overrated wrestler of the year, because I think he's actually had a really good year, you know, and that the more I think about it. All right, next up we have Kings of Wrestling versus LAX. I don't know, man. I know this is a dream match and everything, but you know, you got the Homicide factor. I don't need to talk about how, you know, disappointing Homicide has been, but at the same time, maybe Homicide's a little bit more comfortable wrestling as a tag team, in a tag team, you know, environment, you know, because that's what he's been doing over the past, you know, 4 or 5 years. So I don't know. It could be good. It is a dream matchup. You know, Hernandez, I saw him at Impact last night. He looks like he's in really good shape. I think Claudio and Hernandez going at it, that should be really, really fun. It should be good, though, but definitely don't expect this to be like the best Kings of Wrestling match to date so far. It's a non-title match. So, I mean, don't expect like anything epic here. This is definitely not main eventing the show. I think you need to go with Roderick and Eddie as the main event. You know, I already talked about Roderick and Eddie Edwards. It could be great. It should be really, really stiff. I'm just worried about the crowd reaction. I just think they might be a little bit burned by the time these two guys go on last. But at the same time, I think a lot of people want a title change. If you watch the video wire and listen to Davey's promo, you kind of get the feeling that he was hinting that, you know, something special was going to happen. And I think he was referring to Eddie actually winning the belt. And at the same time, it's like, you know, I think this will benefit Roderick. If Roderick loses the belt right now, it'll be good for him, because if Roderick keeps the belt until September or whatever, that's going to kill like his drive to win it back, and the fans are not going to want to see him win it back. But if he loses it now, I think there'll still be a little bit of an urge to see Roderick win it back, potentially as a babyface. I just think he sucks as a heel. I just don't see It's like Chris Benoit being a heel. You just don't want to see it. It just doesn't work. Even with, I mean, the House of Truth thing has helped Roderick to a degree, but bottom line is, I think you need a better heel than a Roderick Strong, you know, right now. And I think Davey Richards is definitely that guy. Eventually, I think Davey's going to have to be that guy down the road. But we'll see what happens. I would love to see Eddie win the belt. I think it'll be something refreshing. I think it'll bring a lot of life to the company. And I think, and just because Edwards is wrestling with the American Wolves during WrestleMania weekend, you can still give him the belt. He can still wrestle in the tag match as the ROH World Champion. And he can still defend the belt against Daniels on night 1 and then wrestle with the Wolves on night 2. I think that makes sense. I don't think it's an impossibility, so to say. So that's pretty much it, man. Manhattan Mayhem 4. Let me know what you guys think about this card. Do you think it looks average? Do you think it has potential to be great? Let me know. Alright, so I want to talk about Jericho's book. It's called Undisputed. You know, this pretty much captures Jericho's time in WWF from 1999 to 2007. If you guys haven't seen the Lion's Tale yet, definitely check it out. That was a great book as well, but I think this was even better, you know, because we can relate to a lot of the WWF stuff, you know. But yeah, I mean, a lot of great stuff on this book. Jericho really came across like a good person once again. You know, I think the great thing about this is when Jericho makes a mistake, he's not afraid to admit it. You know, if he fucks up, just comes right out and says it. Sometimes you read a lot of books, a lot of people try to, you know, come up with an excuse for everything. But I think Jericho came across as a good-hearted guy. But at the same time, he came across like he kind of showed his ego a lot in this book, but in a good way, though, not in a bad way, kind of in a confident way. So yeah, I mean, some of the highlights for the book was the China thing, the China situation. Jericho had a tough time working with China. She was like kind of, he said she was okay, but she was kind of bitchy. She was a little bit tough to work with. There was an instance when Jericho gave China a black eye, and then China went and complained to Triple H and Vince about it, and then, you know, Jericho got, you know, treated pretty bad by both of those guys after that. So that was Jericho just felt really, really bad. His confidence was down. He wasn't getting booked on a lot of the shows at first. And then there was instances where he would go into Vince's office and him and Vince would have fights. There was actually an instance where Vince actually told Jericho that he wasn't worth the paper that he signed his contract on. So yeah, just a lot of arguments between Vince and Jericho throughout that first year in the WWF. Jericho felt like he was in a really, really bad slump because he could just not have a good match with anybody. It wasn't until Stephanie McMahon came along that Jericho said he finally, started building some confidence up, and then he finally started having good matches with, Benoit and Angle. He actually said that his first WrestleMania match against Benoit and Angle was disappointing because the crowd just wasn't with him. I thought that was a great match, though. It was still a lot of fun. I would agree, though, the crowd was kind of dead because they had to follow the TLC match, the Triangle Ladder match, which was kind of tough to do. But yeah, I mean, the Undisputed Championship reign, really, he was really disappointed by how he was booked. He felt like he was a weak champion. There were actually rumors that they were going to have Nash take the belt off of Jericho on Raw and then have Nash and Triple H at WrestleMania. Trying to think of what else happened. Jericho was pissed off about his WrestleMania bonus. I think Triple H made about 3 or 4 times more than Jericho actually made. He was supposed to make about 6 figures. He didn't make quite that much. He was pissed off about that. Just the whole way he was used during the Undisputed title reign. He said the only bright spot of that reign came against The Rock. He really, really put The Rock over as a really nice guy. When he was going through a lot of the hard times, he said The Rock was really there for him and really gave him advice. Because, The Rock could relate to him because, they expected a lot out of The Rock when he first started. Same thing with Jericho. So The Rock could feel a lot what Jericho was going through. He said his favorite opponent ever was The Rock up to that point. Trying to think some more stuff about the Undisputed title reign, which Jericho really had a tough time with. I think he told Vince to go fuck himself while he was the champion, and then Vince was actually happy about it. He said, "That's the Jericho I want." And then Vince started to get behind Jericho, and then Vince actually pushed for Jericho to remain champion until WrestleMania. So a lot of interesting stuff right there. I mean, the rest of the book, a lot of the book deals with Fozzy and Jericho trying to get the Fozzy name off the ground. Talks a lot about the business decisions that were made leading up to some of the albums that were recorded. It talks a lot about a lot about the contract situations that Fozzy went through with the record labels and stuff like that. It was pretty interesting. There's a lot of interesting stories behind it. Don't really want to go into a lot of it. Benoit. Let's talk about the Benoit situation. A lot of you guys know Jericho and Benoit were huge friends, and they eventually, Benoit, the whole situation with Benoit happened, and leading up to that, Jericho said he noticed a really, really big change in Benoit, obviously since Eddie Guerrero died, and ever since Eddie died and some of his other friends have passed away, Benoit began writing huge emails to Jericho. Instead of just getting on the phone and talking to him, he would just write these long emails, and whenever Jericho and Benoit saw each other, Benoit would act very, very it's just strange and just a little bit like he was a little bit too, I would say, Jericho kind of made Benoit out to be a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Like he was like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like he was just a little bit too tense. So that was kind of interesting to see. But the fact that Jericho talked about the long email letters is something I could definitely relate to, and I could definitely see why. If you have close ones that have passed away, I think that's kind of a bad habit that you could kind of develop after you've lost people that you really care about. So that's kind of one of the effects of I think that's an effect of depression. Getting on the computer and just writing and writing and writing. It's kind of like you're looking for a way to kind of escape whatever kind of darkness you're going through. So it was really, really touching stuff. I really think Benoit needed a lot of help. He really points to the Eddie Guerrero situation as pretty much the turning point. Also, the other thing about Benoit that was really interesting was that Benoit did not show up to his wedding. Didn't even call him and say, "Hey, I can't make your wedding." He just didn't show up. Like he said, there were some times when Benoit would just act like the nicest guy in the world, but there was other times when he would just not do anything, just keep his mouth shut. And he kind of said that Benoit was kind of weird in his own way. So yeah, that was another part of it. John Cena really put over John Cena in a big way. You know, he pretty much talked about Cena on the DVD, as a lot of you guys know. He thought Cena had a lot of passion. He really felt like, what can I say about Cena that hasn't really been said that was interesting in the book? When Jericho actually got fired on Raw, Vince actually had to persuade Jericho into coming back for that Raw because Jericho was actually planned a vacation already. So that was pretty interesting. Triple H, he talked about how he has a lot of respect for Triple H. You know, it seems like Jericho and Triple H really hated each other in real life at first. It seemed like they just didn't get along. You know, Triple H had actually pulled pranks on Jericho when he didn't really feel it was necessary, and it was like cruel things too. Like Jericho would ask Triple H for directions to the arena, and then Triple H would just say, you know, just get a map, you know, things like that. But Jericho has a lot of respect for Triple H because of the whole quad incident. You know, when Triple H hurt his quad, how he finished out the match. He said that he, you know, no matter what happens between him and Triple H, he can't deny that he has an enormous amount of respect for him. So, yeah, I mean, so that, I guess that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I want to talk about from the actual book. It just seems like it's very, very inconsistent. I think Jericho felt like in 2004 particularly that the company was really misusing him, and that's what kind of, you know, made him want to take a break. There was some times where he just really, really felt betrayed, and it's very, very, very. I think the WWE has done a very, very inconsistent job of utilizing Jericho, and I would say to a degree that, you know, since Jericho has come back, they probably did the best job of you know, capitalizing on his ability since he came back after he took the extended break. So that's pretty much it. I think this is an awesome book. I'm probably leaving a lot of stuff out. Like I said, it's half wrestling. A lot of it's about rock and roll and the rock band, and some of the, you know, just a lot of interesting stories too. Just a lot of great stuff in this overall book. So it's definitely a great read. All right, I just want to give my thoughts on the Jeff Hardy situation. I just think it's unacceptable. I think it's embarrassing, and you know, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the beginning of the end for TNA. You know, as far as, you know, guys just wanting to get out and just leave it, because I think this is something that could potentially, you know, damage reputations. And you know, whenever someone's reputation is damaged, it's just it's not a good thing. You know, it could prevent people from getting money. It could prevent a lot of things from happening. And this is something that should never happen. I understand the TNA pay-per-view buy rates are low, but I don't think that's an excuse for, you know, what went on at the TNA Victory Road pay-per-view. And I'm not so sure if this was a work or whatever, if this was the way to get Hardy off the TV for good. But bottom line is, whatever transpired, this was not the right way to do it. I was just I saw the match on YouTube, and I was just kind of disgusted by it. I didn't have that much of a problem with them giving Sting the belt. I could see them trying to capitalize on the whole, you know, 221 thing from the WWE, because bottom line, Sting had a lot of momentum before he got that title shot. But, you know, him beating Jeff Hardy for the belt wasn't like he was taking the belt away from a credible champion anyway. So didn't have that much of a problem with that. But just the way that whole main event was executed, how, you know, you didn't really give the fans their money's worth. That was a horrible business decision, in my opinion. You definitely should have replaced Jeff Hardy with a guy like Kurt Angle, someone who wasn't even on the pay-per-view. That definitely would have been the right call. Just a shame right there. I don't know what TNA was thinking. This is something that could definitely, you know, hurt, you know, become the beginning of the end for TNA. I really feel that way, and I feel like the pressure is on for this company to deliver something monumental, and not just a good pay-per-view, not just a great pay-per-view, but something that's going to really, you know, save the company. Because after something like that, I mean, you pretty much put yourself in a do-or-die situation. So, in my opinion, that lockdown, I'm going to say fuck the Lethal Lockdown match. The Lethal Lockdown never works. It really always leaves a bad taste in my mouth. They just don't have the talent to do it right now. The 2006, 2007, they were pretty good. They were not great, but they were still good because you had enough talent on the show, you know, to fill out the rest of the card. And, you know, those overall Lethal Lockdowns were very, very good, but they weren't great. But ever since then, Lethal Lockdown's pretty much been unwatchable, especially at Bound for Glory last year, which was just awful in my opinion, even at last year's Lockdown. And you know, this needs to be a great pay-per-view. I think you need to just stick to one-on-one, you know, matches. I think you could do Jeff Jarrett, Kurt Angle, let them finish out their feud. I think you could do Sting versus RVD for the belt. You could do a lot of different things. So I just think Lockdown needs to be, you know, Very, very little filler. Really need to, make it a super card and just try to, try to deliver the best show possible. Try to get people buzzing about this show. I think it's crucial that the show delivers above and beyond expectations, considering what happened. And Jeff Hardy's just an embarrassment. I don't see why you would put the belt and that much belt on a guy like that and put that much trust in him after everything that after his resume. His resume, as far as his track record, after he loses a belt, he has a tendency to get depressed and kind of go into his own little world. And I guess that's exactly what happened ever since he left the WWE. His passion for wrestling is dead. I have no idea why a TNA would sacrifice a RVD Kurt Angle main event in order to make Jeff Hardy the TNA World Champion. And so yeah, and it just seems to me like TNA is just becoming a place. While they do have a lot of young talent, and I'll be very, very honest with this, they have great young talent. They do a lot of great things out there. I mean, the shoot style promos in TNA is pretty entertaining. As far as the promos go, I'm not going to say they're bad. There's a lot of guys in TNA that have a lot of talent in the ring and on the microphone as well. But I don't know, man. When it comes down to delivering great shows, the wrong guys are being pushed, and the execution, as far as wrestling goes, it just comes off very, very flat and very, very stale, and very, very disappointing. Jeff Hardy, Mr. Anderson, and Matt Morgan, that main event, those guys do not deserve to be main eventers, in my opinion. I think there's a reason those guys didn't make it into WWE. There's a reason they're working for TNA and not the WWE. So, I mean, it's pretty much, I mean, I would say, let me just touch on Mr. Anderson for a second. This guy is very, very overrated. I don't think he has good mic skills at all. I know it's one thing to act like a jackass, and then it's one thing to actually go out and execute and cut a good promo. And I think he just acts like a jackass. I think he's very, very sloppy in the ring. And there's a reason why Cena and Orton wanted him fired. Trust me, Cena wasn't high on him either. When Cena tore his pectoral muscle, he was in the ring with Anderson or Mr. Kennedy, whatever you want to call him, and Randy Orton as well. Was afraid he was going to get hurt because Anderson was so sloppy with him. So I don't think he's a good worker. I think Matt Morgan, Jim Cornette used to hail Matt Morgan as the second coming, a future superstar. I think that main event scene was awful. I think the wrong guys are in the main event. I think the main event scene needs to be Angle, AJ, Daniels when he comes back, Samoa Joe. Joe's been very, very inconsistent. I would just like to see a little bit more consistency with Samoa Joe. He's always suspended, getting hurt, coming back. I just would like to see him on the permanent roster and on TV more on a daily basis. Motor City Machine Guns, main event guys. I think Beer Money, Robert Roode, James Storm, main event guys right there. Frank Kazarian, a main event guy. All those guys should be pushed over above Jeff Hardy, Anderson, and Matt Morgan. Trying to think of someone else. Desmond Wolfe, Nigel McGuinness. I don't know where Nigel is. Probably the best wrestler on the TNA roster right now, arguably. And the fact that he's not even on the, I don't know what he's doing. I think he's doing stand-up comedy or whatever. And it's just a shame. I don't know what the deal is there. But yeah, let me just talk about Kurt Angle for a second, and then I'll touch on Christopher Daniels and his situation. I just want to send a message to Kurt. Don't get me wrong, and I'll be honest. TNA has a lot of good talent. They have a lot of good things about the company. But I think it's really, really crucial for Angle's legacy to go back to the WWE. I think it needs to happen. I think it's something that Angle's going to regret if he does not do it. I don't know. I'm questioning Kurt Angle's competitive drive. You know the competitor that Kurt Angle is. When I was a kid growing up, I used to look up to Jordan. I thought Michael Jordan was the be-all, end-all. He was the ultra competitor. He was the man, and the same qualities that Jordan had, I saw those same qualities in Kurt Angle. I saw the same kind of competitive drive. All of those things. But now, I don't know. I know Angle had the drug problem. I know he has falling out with Vince McMahon. But at this stage of Angle's career, he has nothing left to prove to anyone in TNA. I just think he's there for the money right now. I think the money is easy. He doesn't have to work that heavy of a schedule. I don't think he has to wrestle on every pay-per-view or every house show. But at the same time, I feel like if Angle wants to be remembered as one of the all-time greats, I think he needs to go back to the WWE. I think he has unfinished business there. The way he ended his career with the WWE was just unacceptable in my opinion. It was just such an awful way to go out. Just not a great way to be remembered. I think at this point, Vince would definitely take Kurt Angle back. You know, you got Undertaker, Triple H, Shawn Michaels is gone now. You got all these guys that used to wrestle, you know, part-time schedules. Now it's coming to a close. They're pretty much going to be retiring. I think maybe Kurt Angle could definitely fill that void. You know, and it just seems to me, you know, I watched the top 50 WWE Superstars DVD. I'm not saying the list is credible or whatever, but they had Kurt Angle at like number 41 or 37 or something like that, which is just a shame to me, because it just seems to me like they're kind of disregarding Angle the same way they're doing with Benoit. Like they're just putting him on the back burner like he doesn't exist. And I think that's just that's just a shame to me, you know. Without a doubt, Kurt Angle is the best wrestler in TNA, and it's just, you know, he has potential to work with a lot of talent. There is a lot of talented guys there, but, you know, I don't think the roster is as talented as it used to be, where there's like so many great indie stars there. You know, you got so much for Angle to choose from. It's not really like that anymore. You got Anderson, Jeff Hardy, Matt Morgan, and you got all this other great talent, a great amount of talent that's not even getting on television right now. So I just think it's such a shame. This is just a message to Kurt. Kurt, I think if you're any kind of a competitor, you would make that jump back to the WWE. You have unfinished business there. You can do a lot of good things there. You don't have to wrestle a full-time schedule. I think Vince has a lot of respect for you. You're an Olympic gold medalist. I seriously think he could come up with some sort of situation that can make you happy, where you don't have to wrestle on every house show or every single pay-per-view. I think they'll be willing to use Kurt Angle sporadically and in a way that would be beneficial for the company. So we'll see what happens. I just hope he makes the right decision and does not re-sign with TNA in September when his contract is up. You know, Angle has to. You know, Angle's not really. He's kind of a bullshit artist to a degree. You know, I'm sure he's saying that, you know, he has every intent of signing again with Dixie Carter because she's been good to him or whatever. But I think, and Angle said this before, you know, that he would actually like to finish his career with the WWE. I hope he sticks to that. I hope he goes back to that. You know, I hope Angle really, really feels like. I really think this could make or break his legacy. I think, you know, maybe a couple more WrestleMania matches, an ultimate send-off match at a WrestleMania would definitely be icing on the cake for Angle. For him just to stay in TNA and just do the same shit he's doing right now, I don't think he's going to do anything for his legacy, to tell you the truth. All right, Christopher Daniels. Christopher Daniels will be coming back to TNA. The rumor is right now that he'll be actually working for TNA and ROH, which is not a bad thing. You know, I talked about this with other guys, and kind of coming to the conclusion that, you know, with Daniels being on TNA television would actually be great exposure for ROH. So I think it's not really that big of a deal. I'm just kind of worried about the kind of effort that Daniels will put in his ROH matches. We might see the in-ring ability of Daniels kind of suffer in ROH. He might not put out the same effort. So I don't know. That's kind of a minor gripe, but you know, there's a lot of people out there complaining that Daniels is kind of a sellout for going back to TNA. I wouldn't say that. You know, he needs money. He's got, like I've said plenty of times, he's got a family and everything like that. So I can't really fault him for going back to TNA. I think Daniels had every intention of going back. You look, sometimes when you got the fuck TNA chants whenever Daniels started wrestling, he would shut the fans up and make them chant ROH. And obviously he did that for a reason, because he had every intention of going back. AJ Styles, it seems to me like AJ Styles really lobbied for him to come back. There was rumors that AJ Styles was extremely pissed off that TNA just let him go. So yeah, it looks like Daniels will be back, which I'm fine with. I think that TNA needs Daniels more than Daniels needs TNA. Apparently Daniels has actually saved a lot of money and is not really desperate for a lot of money right now. So that's pretty good to hear. Alright, and really quickly I want to talk about the WrestleMania Story documentary DVD. I mean, it was okay. I wouldn't say it was great. I really kind of regret spending my money on it. But it is something nice to have. I mean, it's a whole bunch of WrestleMania matches on there. If you don't have a lot of the WrestleManias on DVD, then it is a pretty good deal. But the documentary, I hate to tell you this, but I feel like I've seen a lot of this stuff before. You get some pretty good sound bites on there from Jericho, The Rock, John Cena. You pretty much get sound bites from everybody, Triple H. So there is a lot of good, you know, interview footage, a lot of interesting things. Now, most of these things, they don't really talk about the actual matches at the WrestleMania. It's more about the venue. It's more about, you know, the historical importance, or why we decided to run in Atlantic City, why they decided to run in Sky Dome. You know, they talked about WrestleMania 3. You know, the stuff about WrestleMania 3 was really, really good. How, you know, they wanted to run in the biggest venue possible, and they promoted the biggest match they possibly could with Andre and Hogan. Yeah, just really really good stuff there. And they talk about how Steamboat and Savage stole the show. Really really great stuff there. They really emphasize the importance of the first WrestleMania, how Vince really put his ass on the line, and everyone else that worked on the show too really really took a gamble, because if WrestleMania was a failure, then there was a good chance that a lot of other promoters would boycott a lot of the guys that were actually on that card, and Hulk Hogan being one of them. So that was a pretty cool story. Donald Trump said that bringing in WrestleMania to Atlantic City really boosted the overall economy in the Atlantic City Trump area. So Sky Dome in Toronto for WrestleMania 6. Trying to think of what they talked about with that. Warrior and Hogan. Edge talked about how he was excited to be there for WrestleMania 6. That was pretty much it. WrestleMania 7, they talked about how Hogan didn't want to work for WWF anymore unless he worked with Sergeant Slaughter for WrestleMania 7. So Vince actually wanted Slaughter to turn heel and act like the Iraqi loyalist. And they talked about how Slaughter went through a lot of pain at the time, how he was they threatened his family with a lot of bomb threats and things of that nature because he was so hated at that particular time. But Vince wanted to sell out the Los Angeles Sports Arena in California. I forget what the venue was, but he was trying to make this like the biggest WrestleMania attendance of all time. I think the LA Sport, I forget what the name of the arena was, but they actually didn't run in a stadium and just ran in a regular venue. So because I believe the reason was had to do with Slaughter, with the death threats to Sergeant Slaughter. They were just kind of afraid of there potentially being a terrorist scare at a large stadium like that. So that's why they decided to move the venue. They talked about WrestleMania 8, how it was kind of disappointing because they were going to do Hogan versus Flair, but they kind of tested the reaction at house shows, and they were disappointed with the reaction, so that's why they scrapped it and went with Sid versus Hogan. And then Mean Gene Okerlund said that WrestleMania 8 was kind of a flop in retrospect. The WrestleMania 9, they defended, Hogan winning the belt at WrestleMania 9 as like they wanted to create this kind of aura of that anything could happen at a WrestleMania. And with Hogan actually winning the belts, it kind of created a thing of like anything can happen, which I kind of disagree with. I think that really devalued the title, and I think that really set the company back, to tell you the truth. WrestleMania 10, they started doing fan access. That was the most memorable thing about that. It's pretty much really all they talked about for WrestleMania 10. WrestleMania 11, they talked about Lawrence Taylor, how Vince wanted to use Lawrence Taylor as a way to just attract people from the mainstream to order WrestleMania because of Lawrence Taylor's ability, and he really gave credit to Bam Bam Bigelow for making that match work. So that was nice to see. WrestleMania 12, they talk about the Iron Man match. Really didn't go into depth with it. It was just Pat Patterson said how it was just an awesome match. That's pretty much all that happened. WrestleMania 13, the backstory of it was, this was the birth of Stone Cold Steve Austin. You finally have Stone Cold. He was really the one that was going to carry the WrestleMania torch from then on. And then WrestleMania 14 was pretty interesting because there was a huge debate about Mike Tyson and whether to bring Tyson in. A lot of the guys, the higher ups in the company, thought it would be a waste of money to bring Tyson in for I think it was actually $6 million was the price that Tyson that was the price to bring in Tyson, for all the stuff that he participated in for WrestleMania 14. But Vince actually said that no matter what it costs, it's worth it because this is going to get the WWE exposure. This is going to bring in a whole mass of new fans, and it definitely paid off. Right away, Vince really stressed that bringing in Tyson really was pretty much what's kind of saved the company. It really took him to another level. The whole aftermath of WrestleMania 14 as well was very, very beneficial to the company. In some ways, it's one of Shawn Michaels' crowning achievements, even though he probably won't admit it. In my opinion, I feel, even though he didn't want to lay down for Austin and get punched by Tyson, have this Austin 316 shirt, lied over him like that. I think essentially, him sacrificing himself for business for that day really did a lot for the WWE, even though it really didn't do much for Shawn Michaels' legacy when you look back on it. WrestleMania 15, not much to say about it. It was they pretty much just said that was the middle of Austin, the greatness of Austin 316. WrestleMania 16, they pretty much focused on the triangle ladder match and how the Hardys, Dudleys, and Edge and Christian brought it to a new level. WrestleMania 17, the Astrodome. What was significant about this? I don't really know. what they really talked about. You know, they just talked about how Austin Rock was the big draw of the show. It was just a step up, you know, taking WrestleMania back into that huge stadium. WrestleMania 18, they talked about, they really switched from WrestleMania 6 to WrestleMania 18 very, very quickly, because they both took place in Toronto. It really went off about how, you know, Rock and Hogan stole the show, and they talk about Triple H and Jericho were really embarrassed that they had to go on last and follow it. Triple H actually said that he was actually trying to get people to change the match so they didn't have to go on last, which is kind of funny to me, because Triple H said in his documentary that he kind of politics his way into going on last, so obviously he's lying about one of them. I'd imagine that he probably just, you know, tried to make himself look good by saying that, you know, they should not have went on last. But WrestleMania 19 ran in Safeco Field in Seattle, Washington. Trying to think of something that they talked about from the documentary for this WrestleMania. This is actually one of the weaker drawing WrestleManias of all time, which is kind of ironic because they did have a lot of talent for that show. They stated that WrestleMania 19 was pretty much the rebirth of Shawn Michaels. I guess that's what you could pretty much take away from that. WrestleMania 20, where it all begins again back at Madison Square Garden. Really didn't talk about Benoit or Eddie Guerrero or anything like that. WrestleMania 21, WrestleMania Goes Hollywood. They did this thing where they went to New York, LA, and Chicago. None of them were big stadiums, but they figured because it was New York, LA, and Chicago that they could get away with it, and it could feel just as big as a WrestleMania. Cena actually said that when he wrestled Triple H in Chicago, he said he felt the atmosphere was so much better because it was a smaller arena. But then when he wrestles at the stadiums, the larger stadiums, he kind of feels like it's the crowd kind of gets drowned out. How the reaction's kind of delayed. So, you know, it was just kind of funny. Like, it seems like most of the guys prefer working in the smaller venues for WrestleMania because the crowds are actually a lot better. But when you work in the bigger arenas, it kind of hurts the overall reaction of the matches. The one guy that was actually pro stadium and pro, like, you know, a lot of people in the crowd was actually Jericho. Jericho said he would prefer to wrestle in front of 80,000 than 20,000. Yeah, so I guess that's pretty much it. Then they had this big part where they talked about Shawn Michaels being Mr. WrestleMania. And they talked about The Undertaker, how, you know, The Undertaker streak actually means more than the world title right now, kind of signaling that Undertaker will probably go last at WrestleMania this year. And trying to think of something else that was interesting about the documentary. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I mean, it was okay. It's not something I want to spend my money on, but I heard it was a great documentary, so it is nice to have. But if you could try to pick it up cheap, I wouldn't say it was worth the $20. All right, so now I just want to talk about some NBA and you know, March Madness stuff. First, I want to advise everyone to check out the Fab Five documentary from ESPN, the Michigan, you know, Wolverines. You know, back in 1991 to like 94. This was one of the funnest teams to ever watch. I mean, it was. I didn't realize they were such a groundbreaking team. You know, they really brought that, you know, hip hop, you know, lifestyle to basketball more so than anyone else. You know, it seems like. You know, I think in the NBA it was really there before those guys, you know, teamed up. I think with Jordan you could start to see it with, you know, the baggy shorts, and some of those New York Knicks teams had kind of that thugged out, you know, hip hop mentality. But I think the Michigan Wolverines really took it over the top. You know, they wore the baggy shorts, the black shoes, and the trash talk. I didn't realize Jalen Rose was such a trash talker. This was a great documentary. I really enjoyed it. It kind of reminded me of how awesome Chris Webber used to be in college. Webber was. I remember this is when I first started watching basketball, like in '93, and Webber. I remember Webber was just a beast back then, and Juwan Howard. I didn't know Juwan Howard was pretty much the piece that held this team together. You know, you have 5 freshmen teaming up, 5 of the best high school players coming in as freshmen. You know, starting on a college team was pretty much unheard of at that time. But you know, they actually played Duke in the championship game the first year. They ended up losing to Duke. They talked about how they hated Duke because Duke only recruited Uncle Toms and, you know, white players, which I didn't really, you know, I always kind of knew that, but that kind of confirmed it to me. You know, I never really thought Krzyzewski was the kind of guy that would just go after established players from established families, like a Grant Hill. Even he recruited Kobe Bryant too. But you got to keep in mind Kobe's dad played in the NBA, so he did have a lot of money. You know, Krzyzewski wouldn't really recruit, you know, inner city kids that didn't have a lot of money. I thought that was pretty interesting. So I think that Michigan versus Duke rivalry could have been a lot bigger if they played in the finals the year after that as well. Yeah, I mean, they really dwelled on the Chris Webber timeout situation. When Chris Webber called the timeout against North Carolina in the 1993 championship game, they really made it seem like that was the end of the world. You know, Webber was, you know, devastated. That was pretty much the end of the whole run of the Fab Five. But yeah, great documentary. A lot of I would say that Jalen Rose was definitely the star of this documentary. He came across with a lot of charisma. He really came across as like that, you know, edgy, you know, badass in this whole documentary. So yeah, I mean, I definitely pick up the DVD when it comes out. It should be coming out shortly. All right, so as far as March Madness goes, don't really have a lot to say about it. I don't know a lot about some of the underdog teams. I haven't been following, you know, every single, you know, team in college basketball. I just think it's very, very tough, you know, to, you know, kind of get an idea for how good some of the weaker teams are as far as, you know, pulling off an upset. I just don't know. But I'll tell you this, I think Kemba Walker is amazing. I saw some of the games from the Big East tournament. I believe he scored more points than any other player in Big East tournament history. So I think that says a lot right there. I think this guy has just improved so much. And since he was a freshman, I thought he was kind of weak during his freshman year. But you can see he's definitely got a lot stronger. He's a lot better. I think he has more freedom now. Back when he was a freshman, he was playing with more skilled guards, so he has a little bit more freedom to do what he wants now. But I just think Connecticut's a little bit of a better team. I think they have potential to do a lot more, actually, than they did back in 2009. But we'll see what happens. I think I'm going to say that Connecticut's going to win this whole thing. You know, Kemba Walker's my guy right now. I think he's the best player in the nation. That's just me from what I've seen. And, you know, I was kind of disappointed that St. John's didn't go over last night. They actually lost Gonzaga. St. John's had a deadly team. You know, they beat Duke earlier in the year, but I watched some of that game. Gonzaga just killed them on the inside. They just didn't have enough size. So I think St. John's was actually missing their best player. So yeah, I mean, I think Kentucky has a good chance. I like Brandon Knight. I think he's pretty good. I mean, the Kentucky team is not as good as last year's team. They don't have the overall talent. I think a lot of these guys, which is a good thing actually, because I think a lot of these guys are actually going to stay and not go to the NBA. So I think down the road that will actually benefit them. And it was nice to see guys stick with Calipari for more than 1 year. So that's a nice change of pace. But yeah, I mean, not really much to say about it. I know Ohio State is good. I know North Carolina has gotten a lot better since the second half of the season started. I would say that Duke is still a heavy favorite to win it. You know, they still have pretty much the same core that they had last year. You know, Nolan Smith is still there. I think Shire and Singler. I think they're both still there, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see what happens there. But Connecticut is probably my pick to win it. As far as the NBA goes, I just want to give credit to Chris Bosh. You know, I've been very, very critical of him this year, but you see how good he is, how great the Miami Heat could be. You know, after he asserted himself and said that he should be getting the ball more, started taking the ball to the basket. You know, it just seems like he's been just shooting jumpers, you know, fadeaways. But, you know, when LeBron penetrates, he gets the ball to Bosh. Bosh finishes strong. I mean, it's deadly to see how great this team could be. I think they still have room for improvement, though. The thing that sucks about Miami is, you know, a lot of these guys like Mike Miller and, you know, some of the other, you know, role players, even Mario Chalmers to a degree, they're just kind of weak for, you know, NBA starters or NBA, you know, guys that actually play in NBA games. It's just not that good, in my opinion. So I think the Heat need to make some adjustments next year. I definitely don't think they're going to win the championship. They definitely just need more supporting guys that could definitely. You know, I mean, some of these guys like Mike Miller can't even like hit open jump shots. You know, when Wade and LeBron get double teamed, they need guys to get, you know, be reliable as far as hitting open jump shots, and I just don't think they can get it done right now. I think as far as the MVP goes, I still say Derrick Rose is going to run away with the MVP, but I would say that Kobe has a huge chance of really jumping into contention. The Lakers could pretty much, you know, go undefeated and win the rest of their games. I looked at their schedule. Their schedule looks pretty easy to me. I definitely think they could pretty much go undefeated and win the rest of their games. I think it's a huge possibility. I think the best team that they play is actually Dallas. But besides that, there's really no other contenders that they're playing. So, and Bonham is playing well right now. So I think Kobe has contention, is in contention to be the MVP. But I still say Derrick Rose. If Chicago has any chance to get into the finals, I say they need home court advantage. They got to finish number one and have home court advantage throughout the East. I think it'd be too tough for them to go against Boston or even Miami or Orlando if they don't have home court advantage. So I definitely think it's crucial that Carlos Boozer gets back healthy. And I think it's scary to see how great this fucking team could be, man. Because think about it, they've only had Boozer and Noah healthy for like almost a couple weeks. But imagine they stay healthy for a whole season. Forget about it, man. Alright guys, for the last part of the video, I want to talk about Raekwon's Wu-Tang versus Shaolin. Usually I don't do hip-hop reviews or talk about hip-hop stuff on this channel, but I don't know, I kind of want to talk about this album because I think it's really, really great. It seems to me like too many people are comparing it to Only Built for Cuban Links 2, and even the first one, but I think you need to keep in mind Only Built for Cuban Links 2 was like that's pretty much like a detox kind of album where he took his time in that for several years, not just 2 years, not just 3 years, but like 5 or 6 years. So it's kind of unfair to compare it to that. But as a follow-up album, this is very, very solid. I understand that the Shaolin versus Wu-Tang album, this is pretty much happened because of the stuff that happened with the RZA, with them being creative differences over the 8 Diagrams album. So part of the Wu-Tang wanted to step away and just do their own thing, like Raekwon and Ghostface. So I guess a lot of these songs kind of happened in 2007, 2008. I could tell a lot of these songs sound a little bit dated. Like the Nas song, Nas actually, borrowed some of the lines from some of his verses from the Untitled album from 2008. So a lot of these songs sound a little bit dated as far as the verses go. But overall, this was great. I'm actually going to say this is better than Only Built for Cuban Links 2. I just think there's better songs on it. I just think it flows a little bit nicer. I think Only Built for Cuban Links 2 had a little bit too much filler. I kind of agree with Dr. Dre that just a little bit too much. I think some of the songs could have been taken off of that album. I didn't love every single song of the album. Don't get me wrong, Only Built for Cuban Links 2 was probably the best album of 2009, but I would actually prefer this. I just think this just has a throwback to some of that, Wu-Tang, Japanese type of, old school sound on a lot of these songs. And a lot of intensity. The rhymes are vintage. I would say Raekwon probably has more passion for rap music and just rapping than any other rapper I've ever seen. He's one of those guys that just, he can't live without rap. That's just Raekwon, But as far as this album goes, you have great features on it. You have Method Man, Ghostface, Black Thought, Nas is on it, Busta Rhymes, so a whole bunch of people. Killer Priest. I mean, I could go on and on and on. The production is very, very good. I would say that this is a great album. I would actually say this is better than Only Built for Cuban Links 2. It's something that you shouldn't sleep on. It's definitely great stuff. Great beats. I would say that as far as the actual songs go, I would say that the best song on the album is called The Scroll. Probably the best song on the album, The Scroll. And also you got Chop Chop Ninja. Chop Chop Ninja has a great beat to it. You got a song called Butter Knives, which is really, it really captures that Only Built for Cuban Links sound. It kind of like the, kind of reminiscent of the Knowledge God song from Only Built for Cuban Links 1. Definitely a throwback to that old Wu-Tang, old Wu-Tang sound. Rich and Black featuring Nas. It's a good song. People are saying that Nas is going back to his Illmatic It Was Written days. This was, I would agree with it, but I wouldn't say that Nas is really falling off at all. I don't know why people say he's going back to his Illmatic days. Nas is just vintage Nas. That's pretty much all I could say with this particular song. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that I like the album. I think it's good. I think everyone should, if you like Wu-Tang and if you like Raekwon, you should definitely check it out. Don't pass up on it. I'm not so sure if this is a mixtape or not. I know some people have said that this was an actual mixtape. The guy at my record store said he didn't have enough copies because it's a mixtape, but that's the only guy I heard it from. It seems like this is a real official album to me. But it kind of has a mixtape feel to it, to a degree, where it's really, really easy to sit through. None of the songs drag. And I think that's, I kind of like that mixtape style, and it kind of feels like that, which is a good thing to me. There's not a lot of bullshit on here at all. I would say almost every single song is good, actually. And it's surprisingly just a very, very solid effort. So I would probably give it 4 mics, a solid 4 mics. So that's pretty much it.